Hello, everyone. I'm Denton Davidson, senior editor for Gold Derby, and I'm joined by Craig Gillespie, the executive producer and director of the first three episodes of Pam and Tommy, the limited series on Hulu. Craig, prior to joining this project, what were your thoughts about Pam and Tommy in terms of their personas and what changed throughout this process?
I mean, I was vaguely familiar with it. I think with the same misconceptions that a lot of people had, which I knew about it, from the 90s. I just heard about it and had just assumed that somehow maybe they were complicit with it. Obviously wrongfully so. And then it was so enlightening to read the scripts that they wrote and to see just how heinous this was and what victims they were, what was happening, and the lack of recourse. And then also just how society dealt with it and how we consumed it, and just looking at it through today's lens with the way our culture was, the way like late night television and the media and the judgments that were made. It's just kind of shocking and really enlightening to be able to delve back into that.
And you kick off this series by directing episode one. It's called Drilling and Pounding, and it sets the tone for the entire series. Why did you want to take that first step and direct those first three episodes? And what made you want to get into this project?
Well, Rob Siegel wrote, who's the showrunner on this, along with DV. He wrote the first episode, and there's a tone to it that I immediately related to. It's like there is obviously there's humor involved, but there's real emotional stakes. And very interestingly, he decided to start with Rand's perspective, and not to say, not to free him of any guilt necessarily, but just to understand the dynamics of what was going on, and that everybody's human and makes mistakes. And so I thought it was interesting to really form fully fledged characters. And we get very little of the real personas of Tommy and Pam in the first episode. I mean, we barely see Pam. It's all from his perspective. So we sort of set up that dynamic. And then what I loved about the second episode was it was complete departure, and it was all about Pam and Tommy. It's the 4 days that they met, which, I really was excited about that episode to really try and capture the chemistry that they had and that electricity between them, and understand like the passion and the love that ultimately, gets cannibalized by this tape, and what happens throughout society. So it was really important to me to set up the love that they had, from that second episode.
And that second episode, I mean, it gets a lot of talk because it's when Tommy's having all these conversations with his penis. And Sebastian Stan is so brilliant in this. What was that like when you read the script? Were you like, okay, what is going to happen here? What was your first take on how you were going to go about filming?
Well, obviously, it's kind of that's taken from sort of a famous anecdote from Tommy's book.
Yeah.
That he had those conversations. So then the challenge was, well, do we lean into that or not? And honestly, having Sebastian Stan made me want to lean into it, because it's an absurd situation, but he commands such gravity with it, and he's so emotionally vulnerable that it makes it a very complex scene. Even though there's a lot of humor involved in it, there is this undercurrent of honesty and earnestness to his performance that makes it watchable. And that's what excited me about it, was working with Sebastian.
Let's talk about the acting for a moment. I mean, Lily James, she was unrecognizable and so fantastic. Sebastian Stan, Seth Rogen, what was it like just working with this incredible cast and experiencing all of that?
It's always honestly, it's always nerve-wracking when you're doing personas, and you've really got to they've got to try and make it their own. They got to try and get the essence of what's going on with the characters, as opposed to an impersonation. Lily and Sebastian came over to rehearse with me, and we started just reading lines, and this was early on in the process, so nothing yet. We hadn't really discussed the characters too much, but then at one point I said, well, let's get up and block it a little bit and try it out. And we went out to a car and driveway and tried that scene outside of the nightclub where they're first like swapping numbers and they've had a great night together. and just the body language and the chemistry and the accent and the movement, all of that they have both prepared. And Lily, particularly as well, because it was such a transformation from this English actress that I'm familiar with. I was like, we're good. I mean, they just blew me away. And from that moment forward, I had no concerns. And it was really all about just sort of guiding them, as best as I could in terms of modulating the performance and looking for those opportunities, because they were both so well prepared with their work that we had this amazing luxury that they can then improvise, and you can throw stuff out and they can stay in character and go with that, and just it loosens up the whole scene. And they were so great at doing that together.
And then Seth, he's sort of this perfect person to have to walk the line of comedy and drama, because even though Rand is a real person, we don't know him. So Seth can sort of play around a little more. He doesn't have to use...
Again, it was critical to me too that he became that character. It's like, we're very familiar with Seth, like, as an audience, and it was great for him to commit to like sort of losing himself in that character. Again, like with the inflections, Seth traditionally has a fairly noticeable rhythm to the way that he speaks, but he lost that and worked on a whole different set of expressions, because there's this earnestness and this sort of gullibility and almost childlike innocence that Seth plays it with, that I think makes you understand how he's making these heinous decisions. It's like that he just isn't thinking through the repercussions of what he's doing at all, which was sort of the way we wanted to access it.
What's it like behind the scenes when you're directing certain episodes and then other people are directing others? How do you work all of that out and then make sure everything has sort of a continuity to it?
Paula Hildebrand was our DP, and she did all of the episodes. We had the same crew for everything. So there was a certain style. We sit down and we talk with the directors, and in terms of like the lenses that we're going to use and the camera movements of the same steady cam operator throughout. So there's a language that, as much as we can, we try to set up it and then let them put their stamp on it, from that, because you want directors to bring, their own sensibility to it. So it wasn't like an ironclad situation, but I think working with the same team throughout the whole show gives it a continuity that is sort of a great launching pad, and then they can sort of sculpt it to their sensibility.
Did you have a favorite scene or a favorite day on set that comes to mind?
That's funny. It's a good question. It's like, I think it's the parking lot scene. I think it's that whole nightclub day with the two of them. And I just love the chemistry of them in the parking lot coming out. It was something that, it wasn't scripted for him to jump in the car and climb out again and run around, and just like sort of exploring it and finding that playfulness that, feels endearing, was really fun with the two of them.
And you've directed films like I, Tonya, Cruella just recently. I heard you're making a sequel, so we'll be looking for that. And then you've also had experience with TV, episode of Physical, United States of Terra. So you've got these things that sort of have drama and humor. Is that what you're typically attracted to as a director? What brings you in and makes you?
It is. It's all tone for me. It's funny. I just find in life, and maybe to my detriment, I use humor a lot of times in dramatic situations. It's just the nature of, I think, how I grew up. And I think humor can be a great diffuser in emotional times and dramatic moments. It's like that's used in everyday life. And I just find I relate to that in the work. It's like I love what I really try to do in terms of that tone is make it subjective and make the audience participate in it, because I'm very conscious of not dictating whether it's funny or dramatic. I don't cut to reaction shots to tell you there's a punchline. I don't have tight shots to tell you it's drama. I don't have music that's telling you what it is. I love that the audience has to bring their own baggage to it, and they're going to find it either funny or not funny, depending on their personal experiences. And there's no right answer, but then it becomes, to me, much more interesting. And that's something I sort of strive for in the work.
And there's a lot of winking devils in your work, like likable villains. Those are always fun.
Well, I think, I think it's, I don't think it's ever black and white. And I think, it's like nobody ever thinks they're wrong unless they're a psychopath.
Was there a TV show or a film from your youth or early on that, stuck with you and really made you want to become a director or get started in the film business?
Well, I mean, two obvious ones, honestly. It's The Shining, which I saw when I was 15 in a theater. And I was just mesmerized by it. And then, more later on, it was Goodfellas, which, just that it's got that tone. It's that I just, again, it just like sort of, it's a roller coaster, and it's just thrilling to watch, and you're sort of hanging on by your nails, and you don't know which way it's going to go. And the stakes are high, even though you're laughing. It's like, all of those elements are things that I really relate to.
And who gave you that first opportunity in the door for you to that really like shut your career off to where you are today?
I don't know. It's like, actually, I mean, there's the first opportunity, which is, honestly, it was a friend of mine when I was back working in an ad agency, and this guy, Scott Weiss, would come in, and we're both 23, and he's like, hey, let's go shoot something today. And we go rent cameras at NYU, and I'd be like, I guess you can just do this. You can just go out and shoot stuff and cut it. And so there was that. And then I think Laws was a huge opportunity for me. And it's like, I'd come off the heels of a not very good experience on Mr. Woodcock. And it was a sort of a fragile time. And Ryan came in and supported the film and was up for it. And, it was a huge launching pad, obviously.
Well, it certainly turned out well for you, and congratulations on Pam and Tommy. We're wishing you the best of luck, to you and the entire cast and crew at this year's Emmys. Such a great series, so many great performances. It's streaming on Hulu. Our viewers can head over to goldderby.com, make your awards predictions, and check out more interviews with top contenders. Craig, thanks so much for taking some time to chat with Gold Derby today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Denton.